sea raged, black and endless, its waves towering like mountains, crashing down with deafening roars. I was in the water, struggling to stay afloat, choking on salt water and fear. My strength was failing. I knew I wouldn't last much longer. All around me, others thrashed in the waves, some screaming for help, others slipping silently beneath the surface, never to be seen again. Fear gripped my heart as the reality sank in. My life could end at any moment. Then, out of the storm, a light appeared, piercing the darkness with a beacon of hope. A massive ship loomed over me, as large as a city. Its decks towered high into the sky, glowing with warmth and light. Figures on the lower decks threw ropes and ladders into the sea, calling to the drowning. Small boats launched from its sides, their crews braving the storm to rescue the lost. And at the center of it all was him, Jesus. I'll never forget the moment he reached me. He dove into the freezing, chaotic waters, swimming with purpose. His hand grabbed mine just as I began to sink. His touch was strong, sure, and filled with a love that steadied my panicked heart. He tethered me to a lifeline and called out to others in a nearby boat to pull me up. Once on board, I gasped for air, coughing and trembling. The storm still raged, but the deck beneath me felt solid. Jesus was already gone, back in the water, reaching for someone else. Around me, workers, men and women of all kinds, were focused and tireless, hauling others out of the sea, calling to the drowning, and preparing to go out again. But as I stumbled further into the ship, I saw something that confused me. Inside, on the upper levels, everything was calm. There were theaters showing the latest movies, sprawling food courts, shopping malls, and luxury suites. People wandered the halls with coffee cups in hand, chatting and laughing as if there were no storm, no sea, no drowning. Many were glued to their phones, scrolling through social media, taking selfies or watching videos. Others were playing games or creating art and music. No one seemed concerned about the tragedy unfolding just outside. I passed a church service on one of the middle levels and stepped inside. The room was full of people singing and worshiping. Afterwards, I listened to a preacher talk about the love of God. It felt warm and familiar, and for a moment, I thought this was where I was meant to stay. But then I saw him again, Jesus. He was moving through the rows, speaking to individuals. "Will you come with me?" he asked a young man sitting nearby. The man looked startled. "Oh, yes, Lord. Of course, but I'm just finishing this sermon. I'll meet you out there later." Jesus moved on to a woman in the back. She nodded eagerly when he asked for her help, but as soon as she glanced at her phone, she became distracted and never followed. I watched as he went from person to person, always asking the same thing. "Will you come with me?" Some said yes, but they never showed up. Others simply ignored him, lost in their own conversations. I couldn't understand it. Didn't they know? Didn't they see the storm raging outside? The people drowning, the urgency of his work? I left the service and wandered the upper levels of the ship. Everywhere I looked, it was the same. People enjoying their safety, their comforts, and their plans. Occasionally, I saw rescue workers, those who had come in from the storm for a brief rest, heading back out. Jesus was always with them. Whether it was a small boat heading into the waves or a helicopter flying into the storm, he was there, leading the way. Through a window, I saw him in the water again, pulling someone toward a waiting boat. He never stopped, never hesitated. His face was set with determination, his hands reaching for the lost, tethering them to lifelines, ensuring they made it aboard. The contrast struck me deeply. Out there, in the chaos, he was tireless, relentless in his mission to save. Inside, the urgency was lost. People acted as if the storm didn't exist. They had been rescued, and that seemed to be enough for them. I couldn't shake the image of him moving through the church, pleading with those who had been saved to join him in saving others. His voice wasn't angry or harsh. It was filled with love, urging them to come. I went back out to the deck, where the storm roared and the work was hard. I saw people throwing ropes, calling out, straining to pull others from the water. And there he was, guiding them, encouraging them, leading the charge. That's when I realized where I was meant to be. Not in the food courts, not in the theaters, and not in the comfort of the upper decks. There was a world out there drowning, and he was in the thick of it. How could I do anything less? So, when he turned to me, his hand outstretched, and asked, "Will you come with me?" There was only one answer. "Yes, Lord, I'll go."